Welcome to Some Guy's Garage. I have a friend's 2023 Mazda CX-5 in the garage today. We were doing some new springs, so lowering springs on this from Corksport. And today I'll just give you a walk around of the vehicle and underneath so you can see what's going on with a brand new CX-5. All right, starting off in the wheel wells here first, just taking a quick look. So we did install some new springs. So these are Corksport lowering springs. It's a standard McPherson strut suspension here in the front. But it's pretty standard layout. Have sway bar here, tie rods here, brakes are here, and this caliper is actually a 2-piston caliper, which is kind of neat. And actually pretty easy to install these and come out. So compared to older Mazda models, they used to have to hammer the knuckle out here, but this just bolts in. There's 2 bolts, so that actually came apart really easily. The other interesting thing to see is there's a bunch of these vibration dampening kind of rubber masses here. So there's one on the sway bar end link and one on the strut itself. So it moves around a little bit, but it must be to get rid of some sort of harmonic in the suspension. So that's kind of interesting. And otherwise, fairly big rotors on this, ventilated discs in and out, which is kind of cool too. So that's the front suspension. Moving on to the rear. Again, pretty standard layout here, but lowering springs in the back again that we did today. Regular floating caliper for the brakes here in the back with an electronic parking brake on it as well. Not ventilated, so these are just standard solid rotors here. And not too much else to really speak of here, but just a pretty standard multi-link suspension in the rear. So moving underneath here, just on the roller stool, this car also has a aftermarket axle back exhaust. So basically just from here. So from here forward is all factory and from here back is aftermarket. Couple mufflers and some larger exit exhausts. Otherwise, there's normally a big single muffler here. But these go in pretty easily, so just a couple bolts there and the suspension or rubber hangers here on the exhaust, but goes together pretty easily. You can also see here the springs we put in. There's your sway bar end links, and the sway bar is way up in here. Just get a little more light on that so you can see, but that's where the sway bar is. And similar here on the other side as well. So you have like I said, the electronic parking brake, your strut, your spring, and your sway bar end link with your lower control arm here. Moving forward a little bit more here, this is the rear diff. So you can see the axle shafts just kind of up in here and in here. So those are your axle shafts coming out that drive the rear wheels. This is primarily front wheel drive, but it does have, if you look here, a coupling here. So this is the kind of the clutch pack that'll engage the rear diff itself. And there's a couple, sensors and things like that on it as well. But that's about it on the rear suspension side of things. So moving forward, you can see here is the gas tank. So there's a heat shield there, but the gas tank's up in there. You can actually see the fuel filler hose right here as well. And then further forward, we have exhaust. It's a fairly large exhaust, so probably 2.5 inch. There's a small resonator. There's another small muffler here. And then the lower catalytic converter is up here at the front, just right up here. There is some cross bracing, mid bracing on this vehicle as well. And then like we were looking at with the diff back here. So there's the diff back there, the prop shaft that runs the length of the vehicle here up to the rear side of the transmission. So just at the front here, we do have the subframe. You can see one of the rear motor mounts right here, one of the bolts for it, but that's holding the backside of the motor, keeping it kind of from twisting, and parts of the subframe here. But most of the front does have aerodynamic undercovers on it, which most modern vehicles do. They do have access panels for the oil drain and some combination, either the oil filter and the oil drain or something like that will be on that side. I haven't had these panels off this vehicle, so not too sure exactly which is under each. There's another third one up there at the front as well. So looking up here just into the back side of the engine, you might be able to make it out. I'll try and tag it on the screen, but the wastegate for the turbo, and the turbo is back here as well. You can see the output shaft from the transmission here that gives the rear prop shaft power. And you can just see the corner of the steering rack right there as well. So a little tight up in there, and trying to get at any of this sort of stuff, you'd have to probably drop a lot of the subframe or pull off a lot of the panels. But otherwise it's fairly neat and organized, kind of neat. There's a flex pipe on the exhaust here as well, which if we look back here, so there's the rear catalytic converter, and that's the rear O2 sensor as well. And then there's a flex pipe up in front of that, which leads up to probably another catalytic converter and up to the engine there. So just flipping around here and looking the other way, we can see the front CV shafts here, the lower part of the strut, the 2 pistons on the brake caliper here, and the bleeder with the brake line as well. Lower control arm, and the lower part of the sway bar here, and tie rod here. But otherwise at the front of this vehicle, there isn't too much to see because it is all covered under all of these plastic panels. But anyway, with the CX-5 here, pretty traditional underside of the vehicle. What you'd expect from Mazdas, or a lot of the Japanese manufacturers, are very similar in both the suspension, exhaust, and underbody design. So pretty neat to see, and nice to see on a very clean new vehicle. So this is brand new this year, and obviously doesn't have a lot of the wear and tear that Canadian vehicles get up here. Okay, and then just before we wrap up here, a quick look under the engine bay. So this vehicle has an aftermarket intake. So this is, again, a Cork Sport cold air or short ram intake that replaces basically the big air box that would normally be here. And you can see it necks down into what's pretty typical of Mazda and their turbo vehicles, but a plastic, they call them inlet pipes, that goes down to the turbo at the back here. So batteries here, fuse box and everything is under this kind of side of things, and then ECU is over here on this side, which you can see the big electronic conduit running down into under the engine. Some things are pretty accessible, so you can see the alternator here on the front side. There's the brake control solenoids. And you can see where the intake comes up, just up here through into the engine as well from this side of things. So it comes up and around from some of the intercooling probably. And typical washer fluid, oil fill, those sort of things. And dipsticks right beside it as well. Probably can see back there, but some of the exhaust and turbo components just at the very back of the engine. Anyway, that's a closer look at the 2023 Mazda CX-5 with the 2.5-liter turbo engine, a look at the underside suspension and other design components of it. Pretty nice vehicle. So far anyway, been quite easy to work on. The job today went really well. But if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If you aren't already subscribed, please consider it. And as always, thanks for watching.